Hello there, phenomenal leader. Welcome to Take the Lead, a consciousness movement with Angilie Kapoor. Now, this is the show where each week we help you become a one with the rhythm by stepping into your potential. Now, how can I do that, you might be asking? Well, by embodying your inner phenomenal leader and taking the lead of yourself and in your own life. Now, as you may know by now, my name is Angilie Kapoor and I am your host. I'm also a best selling multi book author and inspirational speaker, as well as the founder of my conscious leadership coaching company, Oversight Global. Now, at Oversight Global, we are on a mission to address the consciousness crisis in the world, one leader at a time. Now, today we're going to be sharing with you a conversation I had with a truly amazing guest. I'm super excited to share with you my interview with keynote speaker, strategic advisor, and podcast host Alex Snider, focusing on how trust and engagement craft high performing teams. We discussed how leadership as a collaborative dance where every step guided by trust leads to extraordinary achievements. And this amazing interview with Alex shares the leader evolution, building high performing teams through trust and engagement. Now, let me tell you that it's an absolutely amazing conversation, so be sure to stay right there. You don't want to miss this. Now, there's a couple of additional resources I want to make you aware of. Now, firstly, I love waking up to a notification of a surprise article feature. I'm super excited to share with you that I have been featured in a brand spotlight article on the Ego Entertainment Network. The brand spotlight article is titled From Self Discovery to Conscious Leadership, Angilie Kapoor's Journey to Empowering Future Leaders. Now, the brand spotlight feature dives into my journey from self discovery to conscious leadership and how my journey has led me to working to empower the next generation of leaders, like via this very TV show. It's been an amazing ride, and I'm grateful for all the support I have received along the way. So you can read the full brand spotlight feature article at the link that is on your screen now. Thanks in advance for reading and being part of this journey with me. Now, you may remember that a few weeks ago, we had a guest on the show, executive function coach Fazia Kosti. Now, during our discussion, she mentioned that she is also the editor in chief of her magazine, Executive Function Magazine, which Fazia invited me to contribute to monthly last year. Well, I'm super excited to share with you my latest article, Unlock the Power of Your Subconscious Mind for Success, in the September edition of her magazine. Now, in this article, I discuss the role of the subconscious mind in shaping our success, techniques like visualization, hypnotherapy, and mindfulness for deeper alignment, and how to break through limiting beliefs and build momentum toward your dreams. Now, read it now on page 27 at the link that is on your screen now. Now, as you know, because I've been talking about it for several weeks now, I am super excited because the latest book that I am part of, Jim Britt's Cracking the Rich Code, launched back in June and it became a number one bestseller in less than a day. Now, I am super honored and privileged to be a featured co-author with 20 other top entrepreneurs and success strategists, along with Jim Britt himself, who is one of the world's top influencers, coaches, and speakers. Now, the book is endorsed by none other than Tony Robbins, with a foreword written by the legendary Brian Tracy. Now, media outlets NBC, ABC, Fox, and CBS have all run stories on their websites about the book. So be sure to go to our website, oversightglobal.com, scroll down a bit on the homepage to find the book link. You can also click on the QR code that's on the bottom right of your screen now to go directly to the book link as well. So trust me, you will absolutely love this book. Lots of golden nuggets of wisdom from some very successful people around the world. My chapter is chapter 6, by the way. Okay, Okay, so as you may well know by now, the premise of this show, Take the Lead, a consciousness movement, is to help you recognize and embody what I call your inner phenomenal leader. It's your true, authentic self that you are truly meant to be. To help you uncover the power that you have within to step into your potential and contribute to the world as only you uniquely can. Now, to do this in a fun way on this show, we look at the parallels of couple dancing, like salsa and ballroom dancing, with leadership development concepts to help you become the leader of yourself and in your own life. Now, like I mentioned, today we're sharing with you my empowering conversation with keynote speaker, strategic advisor, and podcast host Alex Snider, focusing on how trust and engagement craft high performing teams. Now, let's look at the parallels of dancing with a couple of leadership development concepts that Alex presents us with and sharing her experience and expertise with us. And they are strong leadership is as much about learning to manage yourself as it is about managing others, and embracing vulnerability is essential for authentic leadership. Now, in both salsa and ballroom dancing and effective leadership, the art of leading oneself is critical as leading others. This should sound familiar to you as I am frequently mentioning this very concept on the show. Dancers must cultivate self awareness and adaptability, adjusting their movements with grace and precision while also remaining attuned to the rhythm and cues of their partner. Similarly, leaders must balance self management and self leadership with the management and leadership of their team, ensuring that they are in tune with their own strengths and emotions to effectively inspire and direct others. This intricate dance requires clear communication and a deep understanding of both parties' roles, much like leadership, where harmony and mutual respect are essential for success. Just as dancers must know when to lead and when to follow, leaders must navigate the dynamic interplay of giving direction and embracing collaboration, fostering an environment where innovation and personal growth can flourish. Now, in both salsa and ballroom dancing and authentic leadership, embracing vulnerability is pivotal. Just as dancers open themselves to their partners to create a genuine connection and allow for expressive creativity, leaders must also embrace vulnerability to cultivate trust and authenticity within their teams. This openness requires a willingness to take risks and accept the possibility of mistakes, viewing them as opportunities for growth and learning. And the dance of leadership, showing vulnerability, encourages an environment where team members feel safe to express themselves, fostering a culture of transparency and genuine collaboration. Both contexts highlight that true strength lies in the courage to be open and the resilience to learn from every misstep, ultimately leading to the deeper connection and enhanced creativity. And with that, what are your thoughts or questions on our monologue today? Let us know by emailing us at admin@oversightglobal.com. Okay, so let's get to our featured guest spotlight. Now, Alex Snider is a keynote speaker, strategic advisor, and podcast host. She advises founders, executives, and accelerators, and she's the host of the Builders podcast, A consummate builder herself, Alex has worked across 4 continents, leading strategic planning and operational improvements for multinationals, multi billion dollar divestments, and startup growth and exits. Now, today, she leverages the connections, insight, and experiences she has gained to advise impact driven business leaders and executive teams on how to build world class companies with best in category performance and teams. As a sought after keynote speaker and presenter, Alex's insights have been featured at industry leading conferences and events, including Volcano Summit, Impact Hub, and Collision Conference. Today, Alex is here to explore unpacking the journey of transforming leadership, focusing on how trust and engagement crafts high performing teams. Now, phenomenal leaders, without further ado, please help me welcome to the show the amazing Alex Snider. Alex, welcome to the show. I'm so excited for the conversation we're going to have.
Hi, Angilie. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. I love talking about this stuff.
Sounds great. Now, before we get started, I do want to let our viewers know that we will be periodically displaying Alex's contact information and her social media platform. So, if at any time during our conversation you feel called to check out more about what she does and how she might be able to help you, please go to those links and go ahead and follow and connect with her. So, Alex, I know that I just read your introduction. So, our viewers have a little bit of an understanding of what it is that you do. But I mean, I'm really intrigued to find out how you got into what you're doing. How did you kind of, what experience did you have that kind of drove you that way? Because you were also very young in what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. So I always say that hindsight is 2020, right? When you look back, you can see the path. But going through it until, recently, I never in a million years would have told you that anyone, let alone all of the things that I am currently doing, would be in my future. And I think that that's kind of beautiful. So if I was going to sum it up, I'll try to give you the medium version because it's a winding journey. I actually started my life as an athlete. So I was absolutely head over heels in love with sports in general. I grew up actually out in the countryside. So I happened to have a babysitter that had horses. And I just learned to ride when I learned to walk and all these things. And I really just, there's a strong theme that will go through this of like, I just badgered my parents into, I really want to do this. And like a lot of things in my life, there were, these thresholds, which was, oh, you have to be X years old to do Y. And I just, just like kept it up. And so I eventually got them to manage to talk the coach into like giving me lessons and letting me do the thing. And by the time I was, 11 or 12, I was just getting dropped off at the farm every summer instead of at summer camp because my parents worked. And I had this desire to, find a way. And looking back, very entrepreneurial. I was in a sport that is, quite expensive. That was not something my family could really afford in the way at the level that the people I was training with could. But I found a way. I trained for others. I picked up work. I did this, I did that. And the interesting thing and why I start with that story is I actually think the foundation of a lot of my personality and my skill sets actually come from that. So there's a ton of, discipline that comes with majority of athletics. There's nothing like getting up at 3 a.m. to compete on weekends at, 14 years old. Like it's a different thing than what most of your friends are doing. You have to be out taking care of and training an animal, 6 days a week. You find ways, right? So there was a lot of things there that really shaped my discipline and my tenacity and also my problem solving, right? Like I was just like, where there's a will, there's a way. Right. But also the nature of sports in general, and particularly certain ones. I also played rugby for about 20 years. Oh, wow. Both that and equestrian have a nature where you look at something in front of you, you assess it, you analyze it, you create a strategy, then you watch what is happening either with others or on the field, and you have to then execute and pivot at the same time. And so there's an element, I think, of the way that I look at the world in front of me and the way my brain functions that is just highly strategic, highly analytical, and able to kind of scenario plan in the moment that has served me with that, extremely hard work ethic very, very well in my career. And I say, I'm just wired for what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Long story short, due to a lot of personal and family situations, I had really been aiming at sort of the national team. I had had the privilege to train with certain of the Team Canada athletes. Didn't work out. I, pivoted quite quickly, was quite lost as well, which I think, again, is something that now, having been through that at such a young age and reinventing myself a few times, is also quite relatable for business leaders, like really having to up your game and decisively decide on a direction is
Mm-hmm.
really but I did that, and I went through a lot of different things over the next year. So I went to university, which had been kind of a plan B. I worked in numerous different industries to make ends meet during university. I got tons of experience, and I was, figuring it out. I had got to the point where I was a director of marketing for a team of surgeons. I was very self-taught. I was taking night courses, and I didn't know what I really wanted to do. And somehow the idea of like business and strategy and the ability to combine, numbers, which I was really good at, and kind of like how people think, which I was really interested in from psychology, but not so
Mm-hmm.
much. I didn't think I was a people person.
Yeah.
And so I went and I did a MBA. I did an MBA in strategy and finance. And I, did that during the housing crisis and came out when no one was getting jobs. And that was really not ideal. But through about a decade in strategy consulting, where I did, strategy, I did operational improvement, I did a lot of negotiations and collective bargaining agreements. I also went out and did mergers and acquisitions. I just picked up so much knowledge, right? Like I always say, it's kind of like 3x. Like in 10 years, I feel like I got 30 years of visibility. I mean, I also probably
Right.
worked that many hours. And I loved it. I loved the problem solving, and I loved working with people, and I loved the impact. And that's what I understood towards the end of my time in consulting, was that the impact got me out of bed in the morning, making a difference. And, not to be down on big projects, but as I got into these bigger and bigger projects, it was very divided as to the impact. There were some of bigger companies where they were happy to throw millions of pounds at these projects, or dollars. I was working in the UK at the time, so it was millions of pounds. And, to work on things, but the desire to actually change was really not there. And I found that really disheartening, and I found it really challenging to lead teams
Mm-hmm.
where there wasn't like an impact to the work. And I think it's just my nature, but I think it's also human nature. So some of the hardest projects I worked out in Africa under really difficult circumstances for the client, as well as just the conditions and environment. But those projects were meaningful. Those projects were keeping companies open and keeping, towns and regions employed. And so there was this purpose and impact that was really strong and really vital. And there were other projects towards the end of my time where we worked just as hard, but there wasn't really an outcome.
Right.
And it was around that time where, I was learning so much about myself. I was getting all this feedback about, being a good leader. And I was like, oh no, I'm not a people person. I'm a numbers girl. And, and I had these partners who were just like, I'm sorry, what? Like, you are sent to take over teams when there's challenges. You're sent into the hardest clients. Like, your teams will follow you to the ends of the earth. You're training the best people. You are able to work with other teams in a way that is unique. Like, and I realized this is not the most humble thing, but that was the feedback I was getting. And I was just so not aware, right? And this is now where I look back and I realize that sports is where my leadership grew. And my leadership was very much about inclusion, because I had trouble with friends. I didn't really fit in. I wasn't really included. And so I was quiet, but I was the person that made sure every member to the team knew what they needed to do. And I was the one that made sure that, everybody, was part of things. And so I was actually asked to be captain of pretty much every team I was on, kind of against my will. And I realized looking back that all of that had shaped me, where I was really like, let me make sure everyone knows what they need. Let me make sure that everyone is included. Let me make sure that success is defined. And those were things that actually make such a good leader, without being necessarily the loudest person in the room, on the field, and things like that. And so all that to say, I got to a point where I kind of felt like I had to make a decision. I was being, pushed into higher leadership roles, pushed towards a partner track. And it didn't feel like ultimately what I wanted to be doing. And I really felt called to look for places I could have more impact, and also to shift into somewhere where I was doing a little bit more growing than
Mhm.
fixing. And
Right.
so I left with no job, no plan. I sold everything and became nomadic. I spent the next 4 years without a permanent residence. I lived out of one suitcase, one backpack. I moved around. I gave myself a budget rather than a time frame. And I just started exploring. And what I ended up doing was partnering into the startup of a friend of mine from my MBA days, who said, I'm at this point, but we've plateaued. I need a partner. I need somebody who paid attention in school. He was like, I need the person who makes the things happen. I also need the bad cop who says no. I really need that. And so I
Mhm.
said, okay. I had been kind of on the advisory board and doing strategic things with them as, just out of interest. And so I partnered into that. And we actually also co-founded another company at the same time.
Mm.
And through that experience in startup and tech and cannabis and nascent industries, and doing all of this from all over the world, because I kept moving around while we ran these companies. This is
Mm.
pre-pandemic. I was just like, this can happen from anywhere. I learned so much, and I realized how much I adored helping other people achieve their dreams, adored helping companies mature from that moment of like, we're getting it done, but there is no, reason or rhythm to it,
Yeah.
to much more structured, much more predictable, able to support employees, able to come up and have benefits and have market rates and have, predictable cash flow and strategy, and have more people in the leadership space. I really love that. And so when we went through our acquisition process, which was supposed to be in March of 2020, I flew back to sell the business. Everything went crazy. The business fell through. We weren't sure the deal did. We weren't sure we were going to survive. We really
And COVID
got
hit.
buckled down, and yeah, well, that was why, right? So COVID hit, and I went from I'm coming back to run a sale of this business to I'm coming back to save this business. I hope we
Yeah.
can make it. Um, and there were a couple months where once the deal fell through, and obviously all of our clients were massively impacted, our business was massively impacted. We weren't sure that we were going to have a company, which is a pretty big whiplash from we're about to successfully sell a company to we're not sure we have a company. But I became an expert in all things COVID, all things this. We thrive in disruption was our tagline. We really believed in anti-fragility as like a concept. So we pivoted. We leveraged the tech that we had been using in one way to address the needs. And long story short, we 3x the company in 10 months and then exited in April of 2021.
Wow.
And yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
it was a happy story. I went across as VP strategy and operations for the buyer as part of the deal. So I had, a while where I worked with them at, integrating and growing the company overall.
Mhm.
But I had learned through my time that what I love the most was, you know, coaching my business partner, was advising our founders that were in our space when we would co-work on the weekends. And they would always tell me, like, Alex, every time we co-work, I have a question for you. You have something for me, or you give me a structure. And I know I have saved days, if not weeks, of work and stress. Like,
Right.
you should be doing this. And I realized I could help a lot more companies, leaders, people, teams have impact from an advisory space than
Mhm.
being, the operator to the visionary business partner like I had been. I love that role. I learned so much. It helped me take the big picture things I had learned in corporate and right size them to a growing business, whether that be 6, 7, or 8 figures. Um, but when you're in it, you're still in it. And, it's really flattering to your ego for your business partner to say, like, I can't do this without you. I couldn't do this without you. I'm so, I rely on you so much. I really appreciate you. I love that. It's great to hear, but it wasn't sustainable. And
Yeah.
for somebody who really, I love working in the different environments. And I knew that I could do more if
Mhm.
I went into more of an advisory role, and I could help people build something that was sustainable, where it wasn't just I'm getting them there and then they can't do it without me, or they have to
Yeah.
replace me. And so that's the foundation of what I do. I said I was going to keep it short, but
No worries.
so what I do is I work with, really impact driven leaders, executive teams, people who really want to build something incredible, who have gotten to a phase where usually they're kind of tapped out. They're a little bit of the bottleneck. They still have their fingers in a lot of parts of the business, either officially or they're propping up people, which is often
Mhm.
maybe not the right people in those roles, or they have not been given the structure to thrive. And I really come in with this strategy and strategic thinking and strategic planning to help them
Right.
get that really into the business, the quarterly processes to really help the business mature and have the structure and visibility and conversations and metrics that you need to go the next level. And
Mhm.
then whatever the priorities that are coming out of those processes, really helping with the execution. And that typically is going to be processes or team or structure, or implementing, the standard operating procedures, making sure that you have the right people in the right roles. And then as a leader, what is your role? What
Mhm.
is it that you are fundamentally incredible at that the business needs? And therefore, how do we move you into that and get the rest of it delegated and taken care of properly so that your business runs efficiently, it runs autonomously, and you get to have the role and the lifestyle that you desire? Because often we plan for the business, but we don't plan for ourselves. So
Right.
where do you want the business to be? And then where do you want to be? Both, what are you doing in the business and how much are you even in the business? Because it's really different. And I'm a big believer in success on your terms, but so many of us don't think about what that actually means.
Right, right, right. No, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, you've had such an amazing journey. And I like how, in hindsight, you can kind of look back and say that that really started for you in childhood. So that's amazing. So many things came up for me while you were giving us your story. But I think the first thing that I want to talk about is, how you went from really being in the weeds to really becoming a consultant and looking at it from really a different perspective. I mean, I know that when I went from being in healthcare management and then deciding to pivot and become a leadership coach, it was really different because when you're, like you mentioned, when you're in it, there's things that you can't see. But when you kind of get out of it and you're looking at it from a different 300-degree kind of vision or view, there's so many things that you can see that you necessarily can't see when you're part of what's going on in a company or part of a team. So I really love how you were able to really kind of recognize that and notice that you would be able to create even so much more of an impact if you did it from a consulting standpoint as opposed to being part of what was going on.
Yeah, and it's funny because I've kind of gone like in and out and in and out, which I don't think
Yeah.
is a bad thing. And I think, you know, one of the things that made me a great consultant the first time around was the fact that I had done so many different things. So I had been in it. I had, even being self-taught in some ways, that was great because I looked at things differently and I was able to really extrapolate between industries.
Right.
So I think often the mistake is like looking at the leader in your industry and trying to replicate that. That's only going to have you chasing, right? So in mining, we used to say, don't look at the best mining company, look at oil and gas. They're 5 to 10 years ahead in technology and, structure. So, we would look to that. But even for me, having worked in so many different industries, I think there's a lot of value to pulling between them and seeing parallels and thinking differently. And
Mhm.
then, like you said, a friend of mine, she says, you can't read the label from inside the jar.
Yeah.
So I think that as a consultant, ideally, you should have applied experience before you consult. But I think, for me, and even now, I don't formally do it, but I recently, took on a fractional COO role for a friend as a favor. And I was like, you know what,
Mhm.
this is great for me to be hands-on doing it, using my skills to do it, and just reminding myself, you
Yeah.
never want to get too far away. Like, one of the things that makes me great with my clients is I've been there, I've done it. I'm not coming from on high. I'm not coming from, this is the way and the only way. I'm coming from like, I know what it's like, but I have the objectivity and a broader range of experiences to bring to bear to help you, right? And so my goal is, like I said, not to tell them what to build, but to help them determine what they actually want, and then how to make the decisions around building what it is they desire. And I like to call it carrying objective challenge, right?
Mhm.
So I care about your business. I care about you, probably too much sometimes, but in a different way, in a much more objective way. And I can help you see both your business, and this is the leadership piece, yourself,
Right.
from a different perspective. And I think, we're supposed to be talking about high performing teams. Strong leadership is as much about learning to manage yourself as it is about managing others, because when people trust is about consistency,
Mhm.
right? Trust is about people knowing what to expect from you, good or bad, frankly. And so when people know what to expect, when they know they can come to you and there isn't reactivity, right? Which all of us have. We like to think we're emotionally
Right.
regulated adults, but like, we all have our moments,
Right.
and leadership is extremely stressful. But when people know what to expect from you, when they know what you expect from them, it creates an environment that they can focus, that they
Mhm.
can get things done, that they can be their best, and that they can ask for help and collaborate, because that should be one of the things you set as an expectation.
Exactly, exactly. I totally agree with you there. So let's talk about building high performing teams, especially with trust and engagement. So when you kind of go into a new company and you are helping them to work on the strategies and the processes they need to scale and grow, what is probably the kind of common challenge that you find in regards to their team building and their team really working together and being productive in reaching the goals that their company has for them?
Yeah, honestly, one of the biggest ones is an over functioning leader.
Mm,
So it
micromanaging.
is It is from a good place, and it's not always micromanaging. It's often like not pushing people to live up to their potential or giving them space. I call it like safe places to fail,
Hmm.
right? You have to give people that ledge to, baby bird
Yeah,
off the
exactly.
ledge in a place where the consequences are not, dire,
Hmm.
for them to feel the pressure, do the thing. If they really mess it up, it can be salvaged, right? You're not going to do that on your biggest account or in front of an investor or whatever it might be. But so often leaders are just trying to be really helpful, and one, they're overextending themselves. So
Right.
I've had clients where like they're the CEO and they're still taking new laptops to new employees. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? But on the other hand, I've had ones where they've brought somebody up to be, head of operations, but the person is just in no way owning that role. And so the CEO is basically owning that role plus their own, plus whatever other roles are probably not being owned fully, which means they don't get to be in their CEO or managing director space. So they
Right.
don't get to be great at their job. And the other people are like, well, this kind of works, or it doesn't. And if they're a really good performer, it won't work for them and they'll probably leave. So that's a
Right.
huge attrition risk.
Hmm.
But if they're kind of a medium performer, or they are high performer, but they just don't have the experience maybe, then they will just kind of let it happen because they're like, well, you're the boss and this seems to work for you. And, stuff is
Yeah.
okay. And it's just, it's a bit insidious, right?
Hmm.
There's that A players only saying, which is, I know it can be harsh, but, there's data that shows being near high performers increases your performance by 15%, and being near low performers decreases it by 30%.
Right.
So you can't afford like to not like to have B and C players in a company that is under 70 people. I'm going to say
Hmm.
it's,
Hmm.
you know, the impact is massive, and particularly in leadership and management roles, it is contagious.
Hmm.
And people who are great will either be demoralized or will just look at somebody who is not performing and being propped up and lose respect, right?
Right.
Because they'll either be doing the work for them, extending themselves. They won't stick around, and they won't stick around and perform well for a myriad of reasons that it would take forever to explain. But I really think the thing I see most often is most leaders have come up through various levels, and so they are very functional and they're
Right.
very proficient, and it is easier to do things than it is to lead others to do it. And there is this fundamental pivot where you go from doing to managing to leading,
Yes.
and that managing to leading is a really big shift, and it is very uncomfortable, in part because you have to trust others. You have to figure out how to inspire and guide and support them, right?
Hmm.
And then trust them. That's huge, right? Because if it fails, it's on you. And it is. It is
Right.
always on you in one way or another. It may be because you didn't fire somebody, right? But it's always on you in some way.
Right.
Um, but the other reason is you go from doing things that you can measure, that feel productive,
Hmm.
to doing all kinds of things that are not immediately tangible and productive. And it can feel like a regression to
Right.
step back. And that is a very uncomfortable place for high performers. And
Hmm.
you have to change your mindset
Yep.
to, what is it that is actually my job? And your job as a leader is to set expectations, ensure that others have what they need, hold them accountable, make sure the company doesn't run out of money. That's like number one. It's the lifeblood. But those are big. And I think I always use sports analogies, but I love that you use dance analogies, right? Leadership is a team sport. It's a mix of directing and guiding and holding space and practice, practice, practice. And in between the practice is feedback,
Hmm.
positive, negative improvements and tweaks to the team, right? And
Right.
that's why I talk about trust and engagement. Is you need the trust to make big moves. You need people to trust you for them to put themselves on the line,
Right.
right? Put their reputation at risk and do the thing and take the responsibility and ask for help. Those are
Hmm.
all big moves. So there is that manager to leader evolution. And it is where most people, whether they are entrepreneurs or coming up through organizations, it's where the sticky part usually is.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There's so many things that you mentioned there that I completely agree with you and resonate with. But I mean, one of the biggest you just mentioned is, I mean, I say this all the time, managing and leading are not the same thing. And I think that is, kind of a misconception and misunderstanding that people have. They think that, when they go into their first manager role, they think that they're just automatically a leader. But, that's not true at all. It's managing and leading is completely different approach, different mindsets, different perspective on how you do things. And, in regards to the over functioning, I know that when I was in my first management role and I really found myself being overwhelmed because I was trying to do too much. And I, had to sit myself down and say, okay, I need to delegate some things. I need to, trust my people enough to give them things and help them to grow in that way. I know that, at first I was really resistant because like you mentioned, you feel like you're taking a step back because you're having to teach people how to do things that you already know how to do. And so, but a part of you is like, I'll just do it myself. It'll be faster. But,
And it will
again,
be
you have,
today.
and
It will be
yeah,
today to do yourself.
exactly,
That's
but yeah, later down the road, it will not be, but yeah, I mean, you really have to, again, like you mentioned, recognize your role as a leader and what it is that you are responsible for doing, because there's so many things that come with, delegating or not delegating, over functioning or micromanaging type things is, again, one of the things that I learned, and I call it the leader's sacred mission, is that it's not, your responsibility to create more followers, it's your responsibility to create more leaders. And so, like you said, when you make that mindset shift and you're operating from the proper mindset of, lifting your people up and helping them to learn and grow, you actually are learning and growing in such a faster pace than you would have if you didn't do that. And so, that was one of the biggest lessons I learned. And, it's hard, to let go. I definitely was a perfectionist and overachiever. And so it was really hard for me to let go of that and be able to trust other people with that. But again, it's really, like you said, creating that space and recognizing that, you want to have these relationships with your people where you're in a co-empowerment type of relationship. And, you are giving them space and not like smothering them and making sure that they're doing things, the way that you want them to be done, or at the speed you want them to be done. But really giving people the opportunity to grow and to really, these people that they're really meant to be, and to begin with, and take a step back and really be in that mentor coaching type of position, and grow people instead of hindering them. Because like you mentioned as well, for the people that, are looking for challenge and growth in their work, you're going to be feeding them and making sure that they're staying engaged and building that relationship with you. But if you're not doing that, those people are going to leave because they feel like there's nowhere to go. So
Absolutely. And I think, you have to look at the scalability. And this is, again, a choice of how big you want things to get and how you want your role to be. But if you want to grow a company, the reality is you can't be everywhere, right? And there is also this interesting formula, which is, the skill of the teacher is inversely correlated to the required skill of the student. And so
mm,
you have to figure out what is your capacity to teach people in the different components of the business. That will determine who you can bring in, whether you can bring in low skilled people and make them amazing, or if you need to bring in people who are maybe higher skilled than you in something and let
right.
them determine how that part of the business functions. And I talk a lot about, like, drop the ego, maintain the audacity, right?
Yeah.
You have to have this vision, or somebody in the organization. There's a lot of duality. Often you need a visionary and an operator, but
Yeah.
you need something that people can buy into. And then you need to just overcome, human fallibility, right? Like,
Yeah.
of like, this is possible. This is possible, right? Like, that is huge. And you need to maintain that audacity in a leadership role of, like, aim high, shoot for the stars. That's a constant, right? That,
Mhm.
like, we can do this. And that is not something that is necessarily, fundamental to every human. But the thing you have to do alongside that is drop the ego, right? You don't have to be the best at everything. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to be in charge of everything. You don't have to do everything, right? Like, leadership isn't about having all the answers or being able to do everything. It is about being able to bring together a team of people and leverage their skill sets and their knowledge to solve problems, to
Mhm.
get done. And that looks really different in different scenarios, in different parts of the business, at different stages of the business, and based on you and the individuals within the team. And so there's this, like, beautiful variety to leadership as well. I think there are fundamental traits and skill sets that are quite vital and
Mhm.
important, but there is no one template. There is no one way. And so it's quite an interesting, art and science.
Yeah, yeah, trying to figure out what's going to be best for a company and its people. And yeah, I mean, it should be customizable because not every company is the same and not every team is the same. So that totally makes sense. So I want to talk about your podcast. So you are the host for Builders Podcast. So I mean, do you talk about this type of stuff on your podcast? What is it, the conversations that you have on there?
Yeah, the podcast that was never meant to be a podcast.
Yeah,
I was like,
nothing is ever meant to be, it just kind of
"Oh my
happens.
God." It just, again, you look back and you're like, "Oh, of course." But at the time, I was like, I feel like people need some support, and I have people in my network that have been through this. So let me just do a couple LinkedIn lives because that was a new feature, and try
Mm,
to help. Um, so what Builders is, and what it has really become, is a place where leaders come and talk about their story. And I really like for me, there's two important parts. One is telling their story, telling the
mhm.
journey, because you never see that, right? And
Yeah.
even the people that you do see, it's such a subset, the people that are magazine covers, the bios, like, fine. Some of us love biographies, but a lot of people are not really hearing about leadership or entrepreneurship journeys. And so I really think there's a value in hearing all the different paths and all the different ways and all of the different stumbling blocks along the way, because that's the real deal, right? I'm always like, we get in the nitty gritty. And I really love having that be a component. But the other thing I always want is, what made you successful? What were the key pillars that, when you did get success, were fundamental to that success? And if they have a expertise then I want to make sure that they're sharing something that people
Mhm.
can take away. So when you come to listen to builders, you're going to hear a story. You're going to hear the insights from that story, but you're also going to get, and these were some of the fundamental key things I, needed or understood or mastered
Mhm.
to hit where I'm at today. And here are the pieces of expertise I can share so that there's some tangible takeaway as well, that if you are thinking about or building a business, you can take that away and you can think about that or bring it into your next leadership meeting or brainstorming session or whatever it is, and really have something tangible. I'm a huge believer in that. Most of my content is also aimed at something really tangible. I know a lot of people need help in actually implementing it, and that's I'm always here for you. But
Mhm.
that 10% of people who can take it and run, like I want them to take it and run. And
Yeah.
so that's what we go for on the Builders podcast and how we structure it.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. I mean, yeah, I say this all the time, especially to clients who are like, well, as an example, somebody who wants to write a book. Like they look at the Tom Clancy's, but it's like most people don't know that his journey was like 20 years before he became this huge best-selling author. And like you're saying, we only see snippets in magazine articles or these snippets on television and stuff like that. But nobody really knows what a full person's journey is until they actually do some research and find out what it is. But we're always kind of presented with these people who woke up and they were these big perfect successful people, but that's not how it is at all. We all go through these journeys of growth and failing and learning and getting back up and persevering and being diligent and stuff like that. So yeah, I totally agree with you that it's really important that people hear that because just our society, we're just presented with people who just woke up perfect and successful, and that's just not reality. So
Right. Or you get the headline, which is like, here's where they started and here's where they are. And you're like, okay, but what are the,
stuff
15,
in
20,
between.
40 years in between that? And also what's the reality? I had a client on last season who did, almost 30 years in HR
Yeah.
at executive levels at that. And she is now an entrepreneur. And she was like, and here's the reality, because
Mhm.
I was at the top of the top and I was this. I was not prepared for these elements as a high functioning, successful corporate person going into entrepreneurship. Here's what I learned,
Right.
and I was like, I love it. And I love, you got to be candid to come on Builders
Right.
because we don't hold anything back. I want the real story. We keep it light when it's light, but sometimes it's heavy. And I think that is real because, and it's not meant to be a cautionary tale. I don't want to dissuade anybody. I don't
Right.
think, entrepreneurship is for everybody. I don't necessarily think leadership is for everybody. But it's not about that. It's about, if you're in that hard moment, great. If you're in an amazing moment, great. But when you're in that hard moment, you can think back and be like, that person went through this and
Exactly.
and now they're here. So, okay, I can get through that too. And maybe I can reach out to them, right? Like I always want to create the platform for connection. That was 100% how the podcast started. So I was at a conference and I was hearing all these conversations and I was like, well, the world is not back to having regular interactions, whether it be happy hours, conferences, etc. And
Mhm.
we're missing out on, you walk up to a group and they're having a conversation and you hear the thing that you needed to hear.
Right.
And we just weren't having as much of that in late 2022. And the recession had been something I'd been talking about with my clients with for 9, 10, 12 months.
Mhm.
But I saw people stagnating. I saw people not making decisions. And I saw that we had a lack of connection and community. We were still, in the pandemic, coming out of it. We're not sure what's happening. And that was the purpose. I said, I believe, I have a thesis that you can navigate a recession, but you need a strategy for resource
Mhm.
allocation. You need community and connection so that you aren't sitting alone in this stasis, right? In it's this not making decisions. And then you have to make decisions and move forward. And
Right.
so I thought, well, how can I bring together people like myself who have, through both the things I talked about and a level of luck, come out on top from recessionary periods multiple times?
Mm.
And it was like, could I get 3 or 4 people in my network to jump on a half an hour fireside chat with me and just talk and let people listen. And maybe one person is going to hear the thing they need to make the decision to move forward. That was the foundation that there was a lot more response from even bigger people in my network than I expected. The conversations were so great. I decided to put them out beyond LinkedIn Lives. And then through that, now I have a podcast on 4.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, I love one of the things that I'm always saying at the end of the show is I don't believe in coincidences. You were brought to this episode because you needed to receive something. So yeah, I definitely believe in that as well. So unfortunately, Alex, we are out of time. Do you have any kind of final thoughts or words of wisdom that you'd like to leave our audience with?
I think, leadership is the personal development course that none of us asked for. And so I really think that, real, vulnerable connection and peer connection is fundamental to navigating that journey. And so whether it's coming to the Builders podcast, whether it's finding something local or online, do not do it alone, right? It genuinely is a team sport. Absolutely. Do I mean your team and your business? Yes. But I also mean the people around you. And it is unique. And so, if there is nobody around you that is walking that journey or has walked that journey, it will be harder. We are evolutionarily programmed to gravitate to the norm of our communities and our societies. And so if the people around you are not doing the things that you are trying to do, you will feel more alone and you will be, swimming against the tide. So I think connection and community is really, really massive and vital for getting there and getting there in a better, in a better state.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Thank you. That is beautiful. Thank you so much, Alex, for being here and sharing your
For
story with
having
us
me.
and your experience. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I know that the viewers are going to get a lot of out of it.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
One of my hugest wake up calls was I did not feel good doing what I was doing or being who I was being. And I always got told that there was something wrong with me. But you know what? There was something wrong with that situation because I don't believe, actually, I know that God did not create and put each of every one of us on this earth to be the same and to not be happy. And when you're embodying your inner phenomenal leader, you are better equipped to deal with all those struggles coming your way. And that's what's important. And that's what I strive to do as a conscious leadership coach, is to help others recognize that you are meant for so much more. You are meant to be the leader of your life and of yourself. And you are meant for greatness, to be extraordinary, and to have a life that you love. And that's why I love doing what I do. And that's why I know that everybody who is here, it's not a coincidence that you're here. I don't believe in coincidences. You're not here by accident. You did not randomly choose to come to this particular summit. You did not randomly choose to be present during this particular presentation. You were here for a reason. Now, if you've been watching our show regularly, you know that I am so excited that we've launched our premier transformational coaching experience, Meant to Lead. Now, unlike traditional leadership development programs, Meant to Lead emphasizes internal growth and self leadership as the cornerstone of effective leadership growth and development. Now, I've spent the last 2+ years meticulously crafting Meant to Lead, drawing from the insights that I've gained from my own journeys in the healthcare industry and as an entrepreneur, as well as from guiding other workplace managers, leaders, coaches, and various entrepreneurs. Now, central to the program is my tested and proven 5-step coming into your inner leader process. And those steps include the awareness phase, consciousness journey, mindset transformation, conceptual shifts, and skill set enhancement. Now, participants of our mentally transformational experience will embark on a transformative journey discovering their inner phenomenal leader and learning to lead themselves to success and fulfillment. My philosophy is grounded in the belief that effective leadership stems from mastering self leadership and tapping into one's extraordinary power. So don't miss this opportunity to unlock your fullest potential. Go to our website now for more information on our Meant to Lead individual, group, and corporate offerings. And there you have it, beautiful souls. As this episode of Take the Lead, a consciousness movement with Angilie Kapoor comes to a close, I want to thank our truly amazing guest, keynote speaker, strategic advisor, and podcast host, Alex Snider, again for joining us today and for sharing with us her experience, expertise, and insights on how trust and engagement craft high performing teams and how leadership is a collaborative dance where every step, guided by trust, leads to extraordinary achievements. And also, thank you, Bright Light, for being here with us today, too. Remember, like I always say, I don't believe in coincidences, and you, Bright Light, were meant to be here today to receive whatever message you were meant to receive from this episode. So keep showing up, keep loving on yourself, and keep making progress on your journey to becoming the phenomenal leader I know you truly are. Now, be sure to join me next week as we'll be exploring another amazing topic with our special guest, award winning speaker, female leadership expert, and quantum transformation strategist, Ayana Margaroni. Now, Ayana and I had an amazingly enlightening discussion on the dynamics of leadership styles, contrasting hierarchical structures, and embracing diverse leadership approaches. It's another episode that you don't want to miss, so be sure to set your reminders to be back here with me on Monday, October 14th at 6 p.m. Pacific time. All right, my beautiful, phenomenal leaders, have a great week. Don't forget to grab a copy of the latest book that I am part of, Cracking the Rich Code, and I will see you on Monday. Take care and God bless. Bye-bye. On our next episode of Take the Lead, a consciousness movement with Angilie Kapoor, guest Ayana Margaroni joins us to discuss Embody the Leader of the Future Today. Don't miss our next episode on E360 TV.